Welcome back to Super Game Maga's Top 20 Super NES Games Part 2. Number 10. Breath of Fire 2 is a role-playing game developed and published by Capcom in 1994. In this game you play a character called Ryu. Ryu decides to embark on this journey after his friend is falsely accused of a crime he did not commit. Along his journey, Ryu meets many interesting and unique characters throughout the game. They have all different special moves and attacks they can use. Such as Ran, the Rhino character, seems to be oppressed by tree stumps in some way or another. You won't escape this time, Stump. Many of the characters have some really impressive graphical effects with their spells, such as Nina, the main mage of the game. One of my favorite features of this game that made me really fall in love with it was the ability to create your own town and build it up and collect people to live there. So over time you really felt like you were accomplishing something. Kind of like a super early version of achievements that actually meant something. It wasn't just visual though, having your own town would give you great discounts and the ability to buy certain items. And there was a reason this game was called Breath of Fire. The awesome dragon attacks. Number 9. Kirby Superstar was one of the best games you could get for the Super NES at the time, and had tons of modes which offered tons of replayability. Sometimes it was fun just to play a game that wasn't so serious and had bright colors and cheerful music to go with it. All the different special abilities and types of attacks made it really fun to replay and fight different fights all the time, trying out new strategies. And the ability to play multiplayer made the game even more fun. All the different locations and environments kept the game really fresh, and being able to go back and pick which zone you started off in made it fun every time, and you didn't feel monotonous repeating areas because you didn't have to go there if you didn't want to. Other modes like this race mode was really fun and offered a lot of variety to your gameplay, and not many games would give you all these different game modes with great quality, and they were all fun, even if you barely ever won like myself. And the Samurai mode, while simple, was still very fun and a delight to play. All these great modes added up together made Kirby a fantastic game to own. The Ocho. Legend of Gaia, as it was called in the United States, was a great RPG that not many people noticed right away. This game was created by the early Enix before they joined up with Square. This is one of the RPGs that made you really feel like you were a world traveler and explorer. You play as a young boy, Will, who one day stumbles upon a portal to another dimension and meets the goddess statue inside of a place called Dark Space. The hero Will has some kind of mysterious power to move objects using his flute, of all things. His flute actually remains his main weapon for the full game until you transform into other characters. Eventually in the story, you return home to find a young lady in your house. She winds up being the princess of a nearby castle and has escaped, and the guards come to return her. Will's father is a lost adventurer, and eventually the king from the castle wants an artifact that he found brought to him. Once you fail to give the king the artifact that he so dearly wants, he throws you into the prison of the jail, and then your adventure begins. For the most part in the game, you fight as Will. The combat is pretty basic and not as smooth as a game as Zelda, but it's still fun and rewarding. The combat becomes even more fun, though, when you unlock the other champions you can turn into, such as Friedan the Knight. Freedan is just an overall badass and makes going through some of these longer dungeons much more tolerable and enjoyable at the same time. Legend of Gaia is a great game if you really want to feel like Indiana Jones and explore these historical fiction type areas. If you love Super Nintendo RPGs, this one has got to be one you have to play. 7. Yes, Top Gear, no relation to the show, was one of the first racing games for the Super Nintendo. I remember when I first saw this game in the video game store, I was amazed at how fast this is moving. It looked like you're moving at the speed of light. I've never seen a game move this fast at all, and it really pumped you up just to watch the gameplay. This was one of the earlier Super NES games, and it really showed off the power and the speed of the Super Nintendo system. Not to mention the fantastic graphics. It was a perfect game to invite your friends over and get some multiplayer going. And the music is so fantastic, even the band Muse was clearly inspired by it. Listen. Now that's pretty close. Besides the music, one of the other kind of hilarious features is that you could run out of fuel. A lot of people thought it was annoying, but it really put a lot more strategy into the game. Yep, I gotta work on my strategy. Number 6. The Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, one of the games that made people who didn't own a Super Nintendo very jealous. Starts off as a typical RPG story, you know, beautiful, perfect land destroyed by some greedy douchebag, aka a Ganon in this game. Like what often happens to me at night, a princess will call my name while I'm sleeping and summon me to her castle. Link, in this case, hops out of bed and heads out in the pouring rain to find this mysterious voice and save her. You know, it starts off as a typical Zelda-like story where you gotta infiltrate the castle and save the princess. As soon as you get into combat, you realize how smooth it is and how perfect it feels to move Link around the screen. A lot of games have trouble just getting the basic controls to be this smooth as Zelda: Link to the Past. This is another game that perfectly shows off how great the graphics could be on the Super NES. As I said earlier, the game starts off as a very typical Zelda-like game, but later on, everything flips on its head and the game becomes way more deep and interesting. I remember being almost overwhelmed at the amount of secrets and world to explore in this game. A lot of my favorite games seem to have lots of secrets, and I think it's because finding secrets makes you feel like you did something maybe that someone else didn't quite necessarily do. And I think it's that enjoyable because it makes you feel smart and also rewards you at the same time. I'm assuming everyone watching this video pretty much has played this game, but if you're one of the rare people that haven't, you really owe it to yourself to get out there and play this beautiful game. Number 5. Super Mario World. What can be said about this game that hasn't already been said? It is definitely the best 2D platformer game that has ever been created, and I don't think it'll ever be topped. Just like Zelda, this was another game that made people really jealous if they didn't have a Super Nintendo. This is also the first game that introduced Yoshi, a green dinosaur-like thing that'll pretty much eat anything. Yoshi added a whole new mechanic and lovable character to the series. This game pretty much left off where Super Mario Bros. 3 left off, with new locations and interesting boss fights. Being one of the early Super Nintendo games, this game really showed off the nice graphics and sound effects that the Super Nintendo Entertainment System could pull off. As I said earlier, secrets are awesome, and the new flying cape gave you access to way more secrets than you could possibly imagine. This game was overflowing with secrets, and it kept it fresh, and you couldn't wait to show your friends what secrets you found out. With so many different and interesting locations, it was really hard to get bored of this game, especially with the option to go down branching paths through secrets. This game is a definite must-play for any serious fan of the Super Nintendo system. Number 4. I gotta warn you, if you don't like RPGs, don't go past this point, because number 4 is Final Fantasy III, or as it is known in Japan, Final Fantasy VI. In Final Fantasy VI, you start off as the main character of Terra, who is a half-human, half-esper who is mind-controlled by the Empire to carry out some pretty horrible deeds. The evil Empire is pretty much the main villain of this game, besides Kefka, who is possibly one of the best villains in any game ever. This game had beautiful dark graphics and luxurious sound that really set the mood for this game. I think at the time maybe it was a little bit too adult for me when I first played it, so I didn't quite get everything and how deep the meaning was, or else it would have been lower on my list. This game winds up being most people's favorite Final Fantasy game ever, so if you love role-playing game and JRPGs, this is one game you definitely have to own. This game has definitely some of the best video game music ever produced, so I'm going to stop talking over the song and let you listen to the rest of it. The triple. Wow, yes, another RPG, and yes, another Final Fantasy. A lot of it could be nostalgia, but this was the game that made me fall in love with JRPGs, and I was hooked. For this game, I can't really remember any significant RPGs I played. I just remembered how great this game was, and how I was impacted by the deep emotional story in this game. This is a typical redemption story. You start off as a dark knight who does quite a bit of horrible stuff on the behest of the Empire. But eventually you make some more friends and you become a paladin, and you're on your road to redemption, and you fight against the very Empire that made you do these horrible things. Even though this game was overloaded with random combat, I never really got too bored of it because, I don't know, there's something about that little sword swing they do that really just kept me enthralled with combat. And the music really made you just want to enter combat so you can listen to it again and again. And in this game you could explore the awesome open world on your totally badass airship. Final Fantasy II was a great introduction to the JRPG for me, and that is why it is my number 3 on my list. Two. The Secret of Mana, you play as a young boy who hears a sword call out to him, but as soon as he takes the sword out of the stone, all hell is unleashed upon the world. Eventually, he has to defend the village that he comes from a giant underground creature that wants to kill them all. And even though he defeats this creature, the town are still very ungrateful and kick his ass straight out. So because of the super grateful villagers, you have to head out on your own with the mana sword in hand. And eventually you meet up with two other teammates who help you complete your quest of saving the world that you suddenly doomed. Eventually you make friends with a super badass dragon called Flamey, who will take you all across the world. As you can see here on the world map, the world is huge. Flamey could drop you off pretty much anywhere, so there's tons of areas to explore and tons of secrets to find. Not to mention the great locations, but this game also has great combat that's varied by the different weapons that you can equip and level up. And the multiple locations are all different and have different environments and different monsters, so the world and the game stay fresh. And the story here is pretty typical and the characters are rather shallow, but the gameplay really holds this game together, along with the fantastic music and the fun to defeat monsters. And this game does support up to 2 other players to play with you, so you and 2 friends can go around and save this world and explore the different combat methods and spells and weapons. Secret of Mana simply has the best gameplay of all the games on this list. Top of the world, baby. This is no surprise to anybody that knows me. This is my favorite game of all time, not just Super Nintendo. I've beaten this game at least 7 to 8 times. I can't remember. The hours were poured into it over and over. New Game Plus keeps it fresh. I don't know what else to say about this game besides it is my favorite game of all time. And I never get bored of it. I never get bored of the music. I never get bored of the characters, the combat. I mean, as soon as you beat this game, you want to jump right back in again to find everything that you missed on your first playthrough and see how you could change the world in a different way, which is generally possible in this game, unlike any other game before this. You talk about secrets, like I talked about earlier, this game has secrets that actually changed the story and changed the world and really affected your character's abilities in combat. This game has about 12 endings or more, and every one of them are great. I've seen them all. I enjoy watching them all every time. So let me stop gushing on this game for a second and actually tell you the story in case you're one of the few people who don't actually know. In this game you play as Chrono, a red-haired boy who goes to the festival one day and meets a young princess who ran away from the castle. As you find out, her pendant interacts with a portal and creates a rift in time and space that you fall into. And just trying to find your way back to your normal time is just the beginning of the game, as Chrono finds out that he is very important to saving the world from a creature called Lavos, who wants to destroy everything that he's ever known. God, I really hate talking over this music because this music is so fantastic, and it just really touches to your heart, and you remember every moment relating to the music and the characters and the decisions that you made. It's really no surprise this game turned out to be such a masterpiece when it was created by 3 of the most important people in gaming at the time. Hironobu Sakaguchi from the Final Fantasy series, Yuji Horai, creator of the Dragon Quest series, and Akira Toriyama from the Dragon Ball series. I know I absolutely just wrecked some Japanese names there, but I gave my best. This is one of those games you remember what you were doing when you were playing it. I remember that I would always like just totally completely ignore my friends when this game came out. I would be sitting in my room on a perfect summer day eating beef jerky and just playing this game for hours and hours. This game itself probably put 10-15 pounds on me. I was just sitting there playing it over and over, like I gotta find everything. I get obsessed. The world was huge. The game seemed endless to me. It seemed like a whole other world you could just practically live in. Even to this day, I still imagine there's secrets and dialogue I haven't seen somewhere, and it makes me just want to jump right back into it all over again. The world is just huge and beautiful. I love looking at the graphics and the art style, and I especially love the music, especially Frog's song. It practically brings a tear to my eye because the song is just so like emotional but full of honor at the same time. Along with a lot of the music, it really captures the characters perfectly and the environments that they come from or that you go to. Okay, on to the combat. The combat maybe not as like innovative or as exciting as like Secret of Mana, but it still definitely held its own and was actually, for me, way better than Final Fantasy, where you had to skip to a whole another screen every time you got into an encounter. Here you just fought right on the map, so you got to see the beautiful map graphics still, and your character didn't have to waste time loading into combat. For me, I don't think this game will ever be surpassed as my number one. It's locked in strong with nostalgia, and I just love it every time I play it, so it doesn't get old. Thank you for watching my first attempt at a top 20 list. If there's a game you really love that I didn't put on here, it's probably because I didn't play it while I was growing up. But comment anyways, tell me what it is, and if I ever played it, I'll give it a shot. Thanks for watching.